Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. So I started to go off on this rabbit trail on the last episode, and I reined it in because I wanted to do a full episode of just this. And I want to start it off with an interesting fact that I learned while I was reading a book. I don't remember the name of the book now, but it's fine. There was a study that was done that found that there are 2,500 different ways to do the dishes. And I thought about that the first time I read it, and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I said, there's probably more than that. I said, but additionally, who gets paid to study that kind of shit? Right? Like, who is like, you know what, for research, I'd like to know how many different ways people wash dishes. My guess is there's probably 2,500 people in that study, which is why they found that there were 2,500 different ways to wash dishes. I bet I don't wash dishes anything like you wash dishes. And my family certainly doesn't wash dishes any way that I wash dishes. And there's 6 of us in the house, right? I mean, the 2 little ones aren't really washing dishes. But even the 4 of us that do dishwashing do not wash dishes the same way. And I say all of this because I know from my own personal experience, but also with working with clients, we get annoyed if something is not done the way that we do it. Let that just sit for a minute, because you immediately thought of the thing that only you know how to do, because you do it right and everybody else does it wrong. Well, guess what? A dishwasher started as a dishwasher started. Clean dishes are clean dishes, no matter how you freaking got there. It's a different way to do it, but it doesn't make it wrong. So, when it comes to a different perspective, there are different ways to see something. There are different ways to view something. We are all looking at something differently from our own filter. And we're going to do things in a way that is very different than somebody else per se. So I fold the laundry differently than my children fold laundry, differently than my husband folds laundry. Does it make it wrong when he folds the laundry? No. Do I fix it? Sometimes if it's my stuff, right? Because it just fits in the drawer the right way, right? Now, you could either accept the fact that people do things differently, or you could make yourself crazy trying to control that it's done your way. Which of those do you think is going to be better in the long term? I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here before you even have a chance to think about that. Let people do things their own way. It's probably going to irritate the shit out of you until you decide that you're unoffendable. Was a book that I read recently. We talked about that on a previous episode. It's called Unoffendable. I forget the name of the author. I'll put it in the show notes. But it's about letting people be themselves and not having to micromanage it. Life gets exhausting if you're micromanaging. Let people have a different perspective. A different way of doing things makes the world beautiful. Because you're always going to do something different than I am. And if I get annoyed every time there's a difference, I'm going to spend my whole life being offended. And unfortunately, that's what we see a lot of. I don't want to say we see a lot of. It's highlighted on mainstream media and social media. That you're offended by the way someone else views the world. I think it's beautiful that there's all these different views. Do I have to believe the thing that you believe? No, sure don't. Your thing doesn't have to disappear for my thing to be true. Right? And for whatever reason, I'm being called to share this story. So I share the stuff that I share here on the podcast. I do a lot of this. I do this work with my clients, but I also do this work with my kids because I want them to have a different level of intelligence, emotional intelligence, than their peers, right? And so when it comes to these different perspectives, my son came to me about a year ago, and he was really frustrated with what was happening in one of his classes. And he was whining to me, complaining to me about what was happening in the classroom. And it was along this idea of a different perspective. And he wanted to simply be right. And this other person was irritating the crap out of him because that person was wrong, right? According to him. And so I told him this story, and I love this story. And there's a cheetah and a donkey. And the donkey tells the cheetah that the grass is blue. And the cheetah's like, no, the grass is green. And the donkey is like, no, the grass is blue. It's absolutely blue. The grass is blue. And the cheetah's getting pissed. He's like, no, the grass is green. I know that the grass is green. I can see that it's green. Why are you, and he starts insulting the donkey. Why are you such an idiot that you can't see that the grass is green? And the donkey's like, no, the grass is blue. It's absolutely blue. So the cheetah and the donkey decide to take their argument to the lion, right? The king of the jungle. And the cheetah says to the lion, can you just tell the donkey that the grass is green? We all know that the grass is green. And the lion looks at the donkey and says to the donkey, donkey, what color is the grass? And the donkey says, the grass is blue. And the lion says, you're absolutely right. The grass is blue. And the cheetah and the donkey runs off and is having a great time. He's excited that the grass is blue, right? And the cheetah looks at the lion and goes, you and I both know that the grass is green. Why did you just tell the donkey that the grass is blue? And the lion looks at the cheetah and goes, why are you arguing with an ass? And so I told this story to my 17-year-old son, who got a good kick out of it. And I said, okay, what did you learn? And he goes, well, that my classmates are assholes. And I was like, no. That's not what you were supposed to learn from that. I said, what the point of that story was that you can't argue with some people because it's incessant. They are convinced that they're right. You're convinced that you're right, and neither the two shall meet. So why are you wasting your time trying to convince somebody of something that they can't be convinced of? Right? This is that same idea. I've said it in here before. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still, right? In that example, there was no convincing the donkey that the grass was actually green. So set in his ways that the grass was blue, right? Cheetah, so set in his ways that the grass was green. It is okay to have a different perspective. It is what makes the world such a beautiful place. And in that regard, you have to know the time or the place in which to have a deeper discussion about why the grass is green. There will be some people that will argue with you just for the sake of arguing with you. This is something that I'm having to give a lot of patience to for my 9-year-old. She is convinced that she has to be right all the time. And it can be infuriating when she's arguing against facts. And so we have to break that wall down a little bit before she can see something from a different perspective. There is nothing wrong with the way that somebody else in your household does dishes. Now, if they're not getting them clean, It's a conversation where you can, maybe give them a little insight as to how to use more soap, right? There is a time and there's a place for course correction. But if you're arguing for the sake of arguing, it's going to be exhausting. If you're always on the defense, there will always be something to defend yourself against. Right? So, challenging you today to embrace a different perspective. The best way that I do this, right? So, in my quest for being unoffendable, right? I do have my moments where I have road rage and I holler about somebody not using a turn signal or cutting me off or whatever, right? Like, I have those moments. I am still human, right? When I can check myself, I look at people and I go, oh, how curious, right? I remember there was a time where I was being really intentional about this, and there was somebody who flew by me driving like a bat out of hell. And my previous nature would to have been to speed up to make sure they couldn't get in front of me, right? That competitive nature. And instead, I kept at my merry pace, and I said, I pray that wherever that person is going, they get there safely. That was it. That was it. My day was not ruined by them. I chose to not be offended by the fact that they were driving faster than me. They were in a hurry for whatever reason. I cannot be the judge of that. Maybe they just like to drive fast. Who knows? Just a different perspective. My favorite phrase that I have recently coined is people being people-y. People being people-y just allows you to look at it with a little bit of curiosity and less offense. People being people-y. That's an interesting thing to do. Interesting thing to say. Right? Nevertheless, there are over 2,500 ways to wash dishes. Maybe you could learn a faster way by someone else's perspective. Who knows? Well, I enjoyed this episode and hope to see you on the next one. As always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye, love.